Welcome to Living the Next Chapter. It's an author podcast, unlike all the other author podcasts out there, because it's hosted by me, Dave, and I'm not an author. So if you want to meet authors and hear the stories behind what they've done and their books and all the great things, come and get a taste of a podcast done differently. It's Living in the Next Chapter. Thanks for being here. Thanks for pressing play. Hey everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I have an author on here today. Excited to have this author on. Because Hannah sent me yet another amazing guest. Hi, Hannah. But as well, this author actually knows where I live, which is great. I love this. This is great because I usually have to explain I live near this city, which is close to that city. This guest is like, I know exactly where you live, and that's quite awesome. So Trunnis, welcome to Living in Next Chapter. So glad to have you here. Welcome.
Glad to be here. Thank you very much for having me. Extremely excited for this opportunity.
It's great. And again, Hannah, thank you for sending me yet another great person. Trunnis, where are you in this big world of ours?
I am in Asheville, North Carolina, and the reason why I know where you are is I grew up in Buffalo, New York. So I grew up 45 minutes from you. And we know I'm just gonna have to be quite frank. Back in the day when the drinking age is 21 and you guys have it at 19, where are we gonna go to have fun on the weekends? And that
Right.
is great old St. Catharines, that I used to go up to that area quite often. It is a beautiful area. It is an area that, even though I do live now 600 miles away, I still go and frequent quite often. It is probably one of my most favorite places on the planet. Your
Amazing.
town, yes.
Amazing. So when you come back next time, let's go out and grab a Timmy's together, get a double and all that. We'll hit the coffee shop and do all that. That'll be
Absolutely.
fun, right?
Absolutely. I always tell people that I want my last meal, and you're going to laugh at this. My last meal, I want to be a Swiss chalet.
Oh,
Yeah, Swiss chalet, chicken on a Kaiser, all white meat with dipping sauce. That's what I want my last meal to be.
I had an author on last week from Switzerland, and I said, "Do you guys have Swiss chalet in Switzerland?" And he's like, "Well, we have chalets." I'm like, "No, no, like chicken." He's like, "No, no, we don't." And I'm like, "Okay, well, when you come here," I said to him, "from Switzerland, I want to bring you to Swiss chalet, and I want you to explain to them how this is not working for you as a resident from Switzerland." So, yeah,
Absolutely. Mhm.
that's great. I love Swiss chalet. It's great. Yeah, I will do that. I will take you up for dinner. No problem at
Absolutely.
all. Welcome. Well, this be great to have you here.
Mhm.
So you are an active writer and author. You're also a podcaster. So let's start there as well. I always love meeting a fellow podcaster around here. My friends and family are like, "What's a podcast?" So whenever I get to meet another podcaster, I get to nerd out a little bit. Tell us about your show. How long has it been running, and what's it all about?
My podcast started in August of 23. It is a podcast. It's called the Four Ps Podcast, and it's funny. My book is called the Four Ps of You, and the Four Ps Podcast almost runs just like the book. I go throughout the world, and I go and find people who have stories that are inspiring that can help others, and it's in the areas of purpose, planning, passion, and persistence. And we all are going through something, and we all have to overcome something, whatever that something is. And I share this podcast to inspire my listeners, and they could be in all walks of life. I know, speaking of Canada, I had an individual on my show it was back in September, right before the NFL season started. And he was a football player. His name is Greg Ellis. He played for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, he played for the Edmonton Eskimos. He finished his season his he finished his career, I should say, off with the Toronto Argos. And so he played for all three teams, but he was also an NFL player. He played for the Miami Dolphins, a team in which I do not like, even though he's still my friend. And also he played for the Los Angeles Raiders. And this was back in the 80s during the strike year, 1987. And in his story, he kind of talks about persistence in the way that, he was in both leagues and he was cut a number of times. And now he is a candidate for the 2024. And I'm very proud of him. And I will plug this all day long. He's a candidate for the 2024 Hall of Fame for the CFL, the Canadian Football League. And I always talk about him. His name is Greg Ellis. He's an outstanding individual, and he has become a dear friend of mine. And so there are stories like that. And he shares great lessons of persistence and being knocked down, making, and showing how even when you love something, there may be somebody in front of you that knows somebody. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And those are great stories. I talk about purpose. A lot of us are out there and we go through different things in life and we don't know what our purpose is, or we lose our purpose. And I talk about stories like that. So that's what the podcast is all about.
I love it. I have so many people I would love for you to meet to come on your show because they fit exactly in what you do. So when we're done here, I'm going to send you some names of people
Absolutely,
that I
please
think would
do.
love
Mhm.
to talk to you and love to share with your community because I love the concept of your show and I love the connection between the podcast and the book.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because when I have authors come on my show, I bring up to them sometimes off camera, have you ever considered a podcast for your book? Because I think what you teach and who you are could reach so many people and support the sale of your book. Can you tell me about a bridge between podcasting and and authorship? What is it like for you?
It was a little bit of both. I'm a businessman, so I figured that a podcast would promote the book. Okay, and it would also promote people, promote stories that actually further the four P's franchise, so to speak. One thing about the four P's actually was an idea. I am a college professor. I teach, and I we there's a program out of Indiana where we they go in Ivy Tech, which is the largest community college in the state of Indiana. They have a program with the Indiana Department of Corrections where they go and they teach inmates who are getting ready to get out of prison. They teach them welding. They teach them electrical. They teach them CNC, which is a another vocation. They teach them all of these different types of vocations. Before they get into that program, they go through my program, and my program basically talks about how to put together a resume, how to plan, how to get ready to get out there. How to pay rent. Things like that. One time, and this is where the book idea came. I was teaching a class, and most of the individuals were about 6 months from getting out of prison. Some of them were in prison for 15 years, some of them were in prison for 5 years. It was a big range. Some of them were in prison for like a year, and they were all so excited to get out. All right, about 15 guys in the class. And I said, okay, what's the first thing you're going to do when you get out of prison? The first thing, I'm going to go to Dairy Queen. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do
Yeah.
that. I'm going to, meet my, one actually brought me to tears. One guy who was in prison for 5 years said he was going to be able to see his daughter face to face and touch his daughter for the first time physically since he ever. So he was
Wow.
his girlfriend was pregnant. He got arrested, and the baby was born, and all these other things that happened before he can get out. The only time you can see him is through FaceTime or whatever they have as
Yeah.
far as prison is not FaceTime, but something else. But all these things. But then the follow up question was, what do you want when you get out of prison? And they're like, I just told you. No, 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 no. You didn't tell me what you wanted. What do you want? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you want to live? What kind of house do you want? What kind of car do you want? What color is a car? Everything in detail. And I found out that, it was silent. No one answered that question. Well, I got to get a job. But no crap, you have to get a job.
Yeah.
But what do you want? And it was silent. And you know what my response to them was? I said, I'm not trying to make you guys mad. I said, but if you do not know what you want, you're going to be in prison for the rest of your life because you're going to do what others want. So I left and I was stunned because I'm looking at individuals. I'm 53 and I was looking at these individuals. Some of them were very close to me in age. And I'm like, you're going to go your entire life and you're not going to know what you want.
Mm.
And there are a lot of individuals who do that. A lot of individuals, they go and they go to college, and then or they go to I'm sorry they go to elementary school, they go to middle school, they go to high school, and then after they go out of high school, they might go to college, and then they might get a job, and they get this job and they work this job, they might get married, they might do this, And the whole time, they're just doing what they're supposed to do, and they never did what they wanted to do. And the what happens to a lot of us is we don't realize what we want until it's too late to get it. It's too late to go back. Oh, I wish I would have done this. Well, it's too late. And sometimes, a lot of people say it's never too late. In some cases, it is too late. So I went and I said, I'm going to write this book. I want to write this book because, it's something that can help maybe balance an individual, and maybe set a course, maybe provide guidance. And it's the 4 P's of you. And even though like, for example, my purpose 20 years ago was to be the best sailor in the United States Navy.
Mm,
Okay. That's not my purpose anymore.
mm.
All right. Because I'm too old to be in the Navy. Okay. But what is my purpose? My purpose was that my purpose, or was that what I had to do at the time? And then I found out it's like, no, my purpose is to love my country. Okay. At one point, part of it was to be in the United States Navy. The other thing is another thing about purpose is I want to be a good family man. I want to be a good father. Well, a good father 15 years ago is different than being a good father now. Why? Because my kids have now aged. My kids are now grown. They have kids of their own. So I can't be the same father I was 15 years ago,
Mm.
because I'm dealing with a whole different element. So what this book is this book is to help an individual who's reading this book, number one, find their purpose. Number two, make sure the purpose that they have is indeed their own purpose. Okay. And then
Right.
after they've done that, then to properly plan and not just say, well, I'm just going to go out and just get a job. No, it's not that. What kind of job? Where do you have to go? If you have to go to college, what classes do you have to take? If you have to, if your purpose is to do whatever, let's say make surfboards. Well, if you're living in Kansas City, Kansas, that's not the place that your purpose should be. There's no water where you are,
Yeah.
okay? And so now you need to plan properly. Then the next thing is you have to have a passion. That's why I said you have to make sure that purpose is yours. You always want to live your purpose. You don't want to live someone else's purpose. I'm doing this because my grandfather did this. Well, your grandfather lived in a different time. That may not be, and after a while, even though you're trying to satisfy a certain individual or a certain tradition, when something comes up, you may lose that passion. Again, regret steps in. And the last thing is persistence. Persistence is something where we all plan, but sometimes we plan in a bubble. you know um Mike Tyson said everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, right?
Right.
Well, and
Yeah.
that's the greatest line. I mean, I never thought that I would quote Mike Tyson, but I think that's the greatest line anybody can ever say, because we all have a great plan. But we all, if you're trying to get something that's worth getting, you're going to get punched in the face.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. And so that's what the book is, in a nutshell. And so I share stories of, some of them are personal stories that happen in my life. And then some of them are stories that I got through becoming, through teaching, through the Navy, through just interaction with friends or what have you, that led me to the book. And so these stories are there to inspire and to make you reflect and to make you think about, oh, yeah, this is where I am in my life. And this is, I'm glad I read this story at this time.
Amazing. Amazing. I love
Mhm.
this. I've had the opportunity and privilege of having men and women, servicemen and women on the show from all different branches of the military. And there's something special about who you are and what you've done that I just wanted to acknowledge. Thank you
Thank
for what
you.
you've done. And there's just something different about the people that I've had a chance to interact with that have served in the past. There's just something special about them and how they see the world. When you look back at your training, everything that's been poured into you and as you've served, how much of that do you still carry forward in your day to day that kind of became who you are now, where you were different before you went entered the
Mhm.
service, and now you're a different person? What kind of elements of what you've been trained in and what you've been experienced that you carry forward as author, as a podcaster, as a teacher? What do you bring with you down the path?
Quite a bit. I would say, and I'm not saying that just for me. And you're right. It's for many veterans. One thing that veterans do is they learn how to adapt and overcome. All right, and you'll probably hear that. You'll hear that. I know I've talked to a lot of Canadian veterans. I actually had the opportunity to hang out with a bunch of Canadian veterans while I was in the Navy, and it was fun. But again, that is a common theme: is adapt and overcome. You are going to be in a situation where it's not going to be the idea situation. So how you need to be able to adapt. You need to be able to overcome whatever that situation is. And as an author, oh my gosh, you have
Mm.
to adapt and overcome all the time. This is my very, I wrote a textbook. Okay. When I wrote a marketing textbook and I wrote it for this company. It was the easiest thing in the world because all I had to do was write and submit, send it to them and call it a day. And then they sent me the book back. It was done. Greatest thing in my life, right? So that's great. It's a textbook. Go ahead. Textbook is so out of date now, it's not even funny. Don't care. If I needed to, I'd write another one. But this book was a lot different because this was, I am going into writing a book thinking, okay, so I'm going to go, I'm going to write it, I'm going to submit it to the author or the publisher, excuse me. Publisher's going to see it, they're going to make edits, and then they're going to send it, and then it's going to be gone. That is not the case. All right. That is so not the case
Mm.
because I had a couple of situations where I had one company that said, "Hey, we will buy this from you," and they were going to give me a certain amount of money. And then I talked to a friend of mine who said, "Don't do that because then you don't own it,
Hmm.
and they could take it over and they can say whatever they want to it and they can do whatever they want to it. You want to do something else." So then I found out that there are so many different types of publishing. There's the standard publishing, there's hybrid publishing, and then there's self-publishing. And they're like, you don't want to do self-publishing because that's more vanity. You're going to deal with vanity. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what? And I was sitting there thinking about all these different things. And I'm like, holy crap. And so I had to find the right avenue to go. And then I ended up finding another publisher who really did help me out and accepted the manuscript and all that other stuff. And then I found out that my ideology didn't line up with theirs. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, you need to bring in, certain elements I'm like, that all of our books have in common. I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. So then I had to find another contract with another book. And then finally I'm out and going. And then we had the situations where now, since it is, and I do have a hybrid type of publishing, now we have to find out even through hybrid. Now I have to, see, now I have to approve everything. And so I'm like, oh my God. So now I have to approve the cover. I have to approve this. I have to approve that. I said, hey, where are you guys? What are you
Yeah.
guys doing? Right. And so, and then, if you don't approve it at a certain date, then you have to go through another. It was so weird. So there were a lot of challenges and there was a lot of things to adapt and overcome. Now I have a second book coming out, which is actually a part of the Four Ps franchise. So the first book is the Four Ps of You. It has all the four Ps in it. The next book I have coming out is, I have the title already, and it's actually going to be out in September. And
Nice.
it's called You Meant to Do That. And it says living your life intentionally and with purpose.
Wow.
So it's actually going to focus solely on purpose. Um, I know you saw the movie Forrest Gump, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Everybody has, right? So in the very beginning of Forrest Gump, you remember they had the feather that's floating down and all that other stuff. And so Forrest Gump lived his life. The movie's great. I love the movie. If it was on right now, I would be watching it. But the movie itself, if you think about it, it's a guy that just falls into good stuff. You know,
Yeah.
everything that he happened just happened randomly, just like that feather floating through the sky. And I think the movie is great. It's a feel good story. It's fantastic, but it also gives the wrong message. And I don't mean that in a I mean, because sometimes, yeah, you can randomly fall into something, but most of the time you have to really put yourself in a situation where it's almost planned and intentional. There's a thing about, life's a box of chocolates, right? Remember that? You never know
Yeah.
what you're going to
Never
get.
knew. Yeah.
And so me now, since I'm 53 and cynical, I said, you know what? If you buy a box of turtles, you know exactly what you're gonna get. You're gonna get pecan, and you're gonna get caramel, and you know exactly what you get. You know what
Yes.
I mean? And so, but the thing is a box of turtles may be a little bit more expensive, or maybe even harder to find than the box of chocolate, the random box of chocolate. So you have to do things, and if you really know what you want out of life, you have to go and be intentional. You can't just buy a random box and have somebody give it to you. You have to say, I want my life to be this way. And so that's what I mean by, and that's what the second book is going to be. It's going to be solely on purpose. It's going to be solely about purpose, I should say, not on purpose. Well, actually, I wrote it on purpose, but I mean, it's going to be
Yeah.
solely about purpose. And so that's what the second book is. And the thing is talking about adapt and overcome is now, since I know the hurdles, and I know that there are a lot of authors listening to your podcast right now. When you know the hurdles and you know the obstacles, now I'm not saying I'm not going to jump into a whole bunch of other obstacles, but I think I've learned enough to know that I'm not going to jump through the same obstacles that I did in the first book.
Amazing. Okay, so you've written textbooks, you've written your now 2 books that you have going. What kind of how is as an author, how have you grown? Like, how when you look back at chapter 1 of book 1, how are you different now while you're writing book 2? There's gotta be a change going on for you as an author. What's
There
different
is.
for you?
There is, because now I know, as I write and as I talk to other authors, as I talk to my audience, of who I see, I find out that there's so many elements that need, that you can add. That's why the next book, Living Life with Intention and Purpose, it's going to be a lot. You're going to know who the writer is just by if you read it, because I have a certain writing style. But there's going to be different elements. It's going to grow a little bit. If you look at, I'm going to use music. If you look at the first album of U2, pretty
Right.
good.
Yeah.
All right. I would say it's pretty good. But then if you look at, when it gets to the height of their career and their pinnacle, when you start listening to Joshua Tree compared to, come on,
Come on.
it's a, but
Yeah.
I mean, you could tell the guitar is the same, but they've learned things along the way and they became much better, you
Yeah.
know. And so that's what, those are the things I've learned, and those are the things that I'm going to incorporate into the other book. There was, while I was writing the first chapter of the second book, I went back and I was talking to somebody. I was like, oh no. And I actually rewrote that whole chapter, just from, talking to someone else and brainstorming with other individuals. So it took a totally different direction.
Yeah. One thing I love about music is when a band comes out, that first album is usually the album that took a lifetime to write, 'cause they've
Mm-hmm.
never done anything before, and that's the very first time they've ever recorded and released anything, and then from there, sometimes bands kinda the quality of what they do kinda diminishes over time,
Mm-hmm.
whereas, like U2, they have their ups and downs, right? But as an author, the same thing. That first book took a lifetime to write, and then that next book
Absolutely.
seems to happen, like, 6 months, a year later, there's another book, and another book, and another book. And I'm hoping, and that's my intention with the podcast too, is to encourage people to improve and get your writings to be better. But I
Absolutely.
always kind of default back to that first book. If I find a new author and they have multiple books, I want to go back, like a podcast. I want to go back to the very first episode or first book and see who they were in that moment in time. It might not be great, but that book took them 20, 30, 40 years to write. That was their first
Mm-hmm.
attempt. So there's a whole bunch of them that got them to that first page of that first book, right? I think there's something to celebrate there as an
Absolutely.
author. And so quickly we move on to the next thing. But I always like to go back to that first book and just go, who were you then and who are you
Abs-
now and what's changed? I love that.
mhm. Absolutely.
So for an author that's listening, again, we've kind of talked to them a few times already. Any other things that kind of come to mind during the writing process that you found valuable, a resource, a tool, something that kept you motivated during the writing process? What was it for you in your journey?
Read other books. So let's say you're writing fiction, and let's say you're writing sci-fi fiction. All right. Best thing to do during the time you're writing sci-fi fiction is read sci-fi fiction.
Yeah.
And that way, what you're doing is you are, number one, you're finding different writing styles. You're almost like doing reconnaissance and seeing, okay, what really grabs a reader's attention. When I was writing this book, I love presidential history. Love it.
Hmm,
And I read biographies of presidents. I don't care, Republican, Democrat, Whig, because we had them at one time. Right now, I'm going to read all the presidents of the United States, and then I'm going to go up to your country and I'm going to read all the prime ministers,
good.
because there's a couple of them, a couple of books that I've read down here where there is some like crossover where, oh, this guy's like, yeah, I want to know what's going on. But so I'm going to read that. But in those books, when I was actually writing this book, James K. Polk, who was the 10th president of the United States, I was reading his book at the time, and so the writing style. Of the writer and the motivations, and even though I'm writing something totally different, but I used words and I used images that are imagery that allowed my stories to come out. So I was influenced by that. And so that's what I did during the time. I didn't read self-motivating books. I hope this book is motivating. That's what the purpose is. But like I said, I read books because I mean I'm always motivated by presidents because regardless if you voted for them or not, these are there's only 46 of them, or actually
Yeah,
no, there's actually 45 of them because we had one that came twice, right?
yeah,
But yeah, there's 45 guys out of all that time that said, hey, I'm going to become president of the United States. So there's an inspiring story with each and every single one of them. They had to overcome something.
right.
So, and that's why I like reading about it.
Fascinating. Yeah, I love hearing the story behind them and putting some humanity behind the title of president because
Yeah,
again, you just kind of think of this person as bigger than life, but they had to do something to get to where they are. So
absolutely.
I love it.
And they had to go through the 4 Ps. They had to find a purpose. Some of them took a lot longer than others to find a purpose. They had to
Right.
have a passion. They had to be persistent. If you hear a lot of the stories, I mean, George Washington probably was the most persistent of all because if he failed, he was going to die because he literally, he revolted against his own country. So yeah, he was going to have a bad problem. So there was some serious persistence with him, and a lot of them had to go find peace. As a matter of fact, my last uh, uh, chapter in the book talks about peace, and it actually talks about FDR. FDR would go, and it's not too far from where I live. It's about maybe 4 hours from where I live. He would go and he would rest down in Georgia, and he would go down to the springs, and that's where he would relax and try to get his. He had polio, so that's where he would try to get his muscles back in place, and he ended up dying down here.
Hmm.
Yeah. Hmm.
Wow.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that as a Canadian looking across the border down to you folks, I love the history of America and what I also find for Canadians, speaking from this side of the border, is that we don't do as great of a job loving our country and being as proud of our country as you do down there. And I think that's something we can learn more from is your example, whether it's servicemen and women serving their country, all the things that you do in the world, but as well just the passion that you have. I think that's something we can learn to emulate a little bit more here in Canada. We do to some degree, but
Yeah.
I think we could do just a little bit better following your example down there.
Well, thank you very much.
It's amazing. So as far as the podcast, following the journey of the book, following your journey as an author as well, I would like to end off with one more question for you at the end. But as far as contact information, Trunnis, and how we can get in touch with you, where do we go? What's the path to get there?
You can reach me at Trunnis Goggins, the number 2.com. That is the website. I do a couple things. I do speaking engagements. I have the podcast. You can get links to the podcast, and also you can actually buy the book off of. And the book will be out here soon. But you can actually buy the books and books plural off of the website.
Great.
Mhm.
Sounds like a great thing. And everyone, we're going to have links to everything in the show notes. Definitely go over and follow and subscribe to the podcast as
Mhm.
well, because you need to do
Thank you.
that, of course, because you're a podcast listener. What are you going to do next?
Absolutely.
You're going to go right over next and check out Trunnis's podcast.
Mhm.
As we wrap up, Trunnis, again, thank you so much for doing this and making time to do this.
My
Uh,
pleasure.
again, the title of my show is Living the Next Chapter. So I'm curious for you as you continue down the path of writing and all the great things you're doing, what can we expect from Trunnis as he lives his next chapter? What's coming up down the road. Can you give us a little sneak peek beyond book 2 and all the other
Well,
stuff?
I will. There will be actually two additional books after that.
Wow.
I don't know what's going to happen after, but see, again, I'm gonna. So the first book is the one with purpose. The second book after, or the third book, which is the second book after that one, is going to be dealing with both passion and persistence. And then the last book, my father was a businessman. He was right there in Buffalo, owned a skating rink, owned a nightclub. He was a legend, and I will say that he was a legend in Buffalo, New York, for many many years, about 60 years,
Wow.
and he passed away. The last couple of years, last I shouldn't say years, last couple of weeks of his life, I would drive. I lived in Indianapolis, Indiana at the time. I would drive every weekend to Niagara-on-the-Lake, Ontario. That's why I know you guys so much. Every single weekend, I would drive up and we would sit. I would sit with him while he was dying. And he talked to me and gave me more lessons and more things to pass on to others than ever than in that during that time than in any other time in my life. I was 42 at the time he passed away, but like I said, he gave me so many lessons, and those lessons are a lot of things happen with entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs. There's a lot of opportunity cost when it comes to being an entrepreneur. And while my father was dying, he shared warnings. He shared good tidings. He shared uh, good lessons that he learned that I would like to share with other people, especially other entrepreneurs and people who are career professionals. I want to share these so they won't have some of the same regrets that my father had while he was passing away.
Awesome.
Mhm.
I love that. I'm so yeah. Can you hurry up and write these? Because I want to read these
Absolutely,
books, right? I'm
absolutely.
signing up. I got my hand in the air. I'm ready to get
You
every
got it.
every copy. So, Trunnis, it's
Well,
so
for
great to have you
you,
here, man.
For a Swiss chalet, chicken on a Kaiser, you get all four books. There you go.
Oh, what a deal! There's a deal right there, everyone. If you haven't been to Swiss Chalet before, you got to come to Canada. It's quite good. Trunnis,
Absolutely.
this is so great to have you here, and
Thank you.
I'm going to have you on some other shows as well because I have multiple
Absolutely.
podcasts, and we're just touching the surface having you on here today, and I'm really excited to have you on. Come back in the future. Let's celebrate further releases. Come back and
Absolutely.
share your story, and we can promote those along the path as well.
It would be my pleasure. Thank you
Awesome.
so much.
All right, everybody. All the information in the show notes. As always, go over and support Trunnis's podcast, as you should, and his author journey. And buy the books. Leave a great review, please, when you buy your books, so that everyone will fall in love with the book that you just purchased. Trunnis, again, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for listening to Living the Next Chapter, the author podcast. Unlike all the other author podcasts, you can also hear us on Apple and Spotify and Audible and iHeartRadio and on and on and on. Take us with you anywhere you want to go. You can follow us here. You can also take us with you wherever you're heading next. We'd love to be a part of your day. LivingTheNextChapter.com has all the information. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the show. Thank you for pressing play, and catch you next time for Living the Next Chapter.